even makes sense more than the transitional talk. Like whatever. It's like, okay.
Benvenute a tutte e tutti questa serata. Please let me switch to English as we advertise this is an English spoken event with a special guest from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, Yaron Brook, not originally an American, but a South African, and who then went to Israel, and who then left socialism as portrayed on his media profile, and like we are eager to know what also led you to this jump, this change of mind. So we know that reading after Shrug, Ayn Rand's novel was a paramount event in your private life, leading yourself to this change. It's really a pleasure having you here as a guest speaker. My name is Paolo Camini, as I'm the local vice coordinator of the Yaron Institute activities, so the oldest classical liberal think tank in Switzerland, founded in the 70s. And but this event is also thank of to Students for Liberty and other students associations organizing it. So Yaron will start with a pitch speech, and then we'll be open for a Q&A session, of course, and also dialoguing with Luca Bertoletti, and Students for Liberty alumnus, a long-standing friend of Yaron's, who will also ice-breaking a little bit this Q&A session and challenging Yaron whenever needed. So thank you so much. We are looking forward to this. To hearing this very interesting discussion.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. It's good to be here. Lugano is a truly beautiful place, so I'm glad to at least driven through it. I've not spent any real time here yet, but I think I can come back. So, capitalism. You know, capitalism, it's a real mystery to me, and I think to most of us who are advocates of liberty. There's a real mystery out there in the world. And the real mystery is capitalism works. The more we try it, the closer we get to free markets, the closer we get to true liberty, the richer we get, the better off life is, the higher the standard of life, the higher the quality of life. It doesn't matter where in the world, whether it's Asia, or Europe, or America, or Africa, it doesn't matter. When we introduce certain ideas, capitalist ideas, ideas of liberty, ideas of free market, ideas of property rights, when we apply them, things go well. And the more consistently we apply them, the better things get. So capitalism is a system that has been successful everywhere and whenever it is tried, to the extent that it is tried. Now, in my view, capitalism has never really been tried, because to me capitalism is complete free markets, where the government's only job is to protect our rights, our liberties, and otherwise leave us alone. And that has never happened. That has never been tried. And some people on the left might say, well, you're just like the communists, you know. You have this ideal system, and you always say it's never been tried. But this is the difference. The closer you get to the ideal of capitalism, the better life becomes. The richer we become. The more prosperous and successful we become. The closer you get to the ideal of socialism, the worse things are. The more horrible things are. And that division is clear. I mean, I was in South America 3 weeks ago. South America is a very interesting place. Anybody know what the richest country in South America was 30 years ago? Venezuela was the richest country in Latin America 30 years ago. Anybody know what the poorest country in Latin America was 30 years ago? poorest country in Latin America. So South America. Chile. What is the richest country in South America today? Richest country in South America. Per capita GDP. Chile. And the poorest country in Latin America today? Venezuela. So Venezuela went from richest to poorest. Chile went from poorest to richest. Why? Because Venezuela adopted socialist policies, collectivized farming, collectivized energy, collectivized everything. And Chile went private enterprise, free market, privatizing the social security system, privatizing investment, and it went and became rich. One country got closer to the socialist ideal, became poor. One country got closer to the capitalist ideal, became rich. Everywhere you go in the world, this is the reality. You look at a week before I was in South America, I was in Asia, I was in Seoul, South Korea, and I was in Tokyo, and you see the exact same thing. Countries that adopt systems that are basically freedom-oriented do well. Countries that reject them do well. Because Europe experienced this for decades with communism, East Berlin, West Berlin, we know the differences between the two. Although, with young students today, I have to sometimes tell them that people were not fleeing capitalism and trying to get into East Berlin. The wall was built to prevent the communists from running away from communism, because they think socialism is an ideal way. So here's the question, and the mystery. I think it's a real mystery to most people who are advocates of liberty and freedom and capitalism. The mystery is this. Why does everybody hate capitalism? Why are most countries over the last 100 or so years moving systematically and consistently away from capitalism and towards socialism? This is certainly the case of the United States, where I come from, which is tilting left constantly in economics. It's true of many countries in Europe. It's even true of Venezuela or countries in Asia. Why do we resent capitalism so much? Because we do. If it's true that as we approach more and more economic freedom, we get richer and we live longer and life is better, why don't we just do it? Why don't we just become capitalists? And the challenge is not that we don't understand the economics. We've had great economists. The freedom cause has had great economists, even recognized by the Nobel Committee. Right? Hayek got a Nobel Prize, Friedman got a Nobel Prize, many other free market economists have won Nobel Prizes. Traffic everywhere in the world. So we've indeed had. So I just to fill you in quickly, the way I've set this up is capitalism is an incredible success, but nobody wants it. And the question is why. And it's not for lack of economists. We've had great economists. We solved, I believe, the free market economists have solved all the real big questions. We have answers to all the challenges from Marx to Keynes to Paul Krugman to Thomas Piketty. We got answers. I think very convincing answers. When we put them in practice, we're successful. So the question is why? Now, part of it is ignorance. Part of it is the fact that people just don't know their history. They don't know what's going on in the world. And some of this is so visually obvious. You just have to have eyes in your head. You just have to go out there to the world and see. One of my favorite examples in that regard, where you can just see the success, was, sadly, no more, but was Hong Kong. Hong Kong 75 years ago was a fishing village. There was nothing there. A rock in the middle of nowhere. There was no natural resources. It's got a harbor, but no natural resources, no gold, no silver, no oil, nothing. So we went from a few tens of thousands of people in sprinkled villages to 7.5 million people today. More skyscrapers than New York City. GDP per capita higher than the United States of America. So Hong Kong did what the United States took 250 years, it did in 75. How did it do it? Where did all these people come from? They swam there, they rowed, they did everything they could to get there from other countries in Asia. How? Why? Why? Because Hong Kong offered them free healthcare? No. Hong Kong offered them a welfare state? No. Hong Kong offered them nothing, except the protection of contracts, protection of property rights, and freedom. Not even the freedom to vote, which they never could in Hong Kong, still can't. Just the freedom to engage in economic activity and benefit and live the way they want to live and not be crushed. And they thrived. And they became one of the richest, and certainly the freest, economically country in the world. So why don't we learn from that? What is it about capitalism that we don't like? We resent and dislike. And I think it's the implicit philosophical moral ideas behind capitalism that we really find objectionable. Because what is capitalism about? What are markets about? When you go into the market, what are you trying to do? What's the purpose of going to the marketplace? So when Apple was selling, when Steve Jobs built the iPhone, sold the iPhone, who did he build the iPhone for? Why? Why did he build it himself? What was the purpose of building this? He wanted it, was cool, true. But what else? Why does Apple sell iPhones? For profit, right? Notice how long it takes people to say the word profit. I mean, we're not comfortable with saying that people do stuff for money. Well, we do. We all do it, right? Why do you go to work? Not only for money, but also for money. Apple makes this for profit. And Steve Jobs built this because it was a beautiful thing, and he had a vision, and he wanted to make that vision a reality. And he built the iPhone for Steve Jobs. Businesses produce what they produce because they're trying to make money, and then hopefully the people working are enjoying the process of making money. It's a self-interested activity. And I remember going to buy my first iPhone. It was 2008, and the US economy was in decline, and there was going to be a recession. And I thought, I'll go buy an iPhone because I want to help stimulate the US economy. I want to make sure my fellow men have jobs. I want to do good. So I went to buy an iPhone. How many of you believe me? Because I know you guys, everybody goes shopping, you buy your shoes and your clothes because you want to help your fellow man, right? You go shopping because you want to make your life better. Because you're trying to enhance your life. And so the marketplace is a place in which we go to seek our self-interest. A place where we go in order to improve our life, to better ourselves. Whether materially, or we go to some experiences we pay for to improve our life spiritually, we go to a concert, we do something like this. But the marketplace is in which buyers and sellers meet in order to each pursue their own self-interest. This is not a new observation. Adam Smith, in The Wealth of Nations, writes, the baker doesn't bake the bread because he cares about you. He doesn't know you. He doesn't really care that much about you. The baker makes the bread to make a living. Hopefully, he also enjoys the process of making bread. And you don't buy the bread to help the baker. You buy the bread to help yourself. So the marketplace is a place of self-interest. But this is the problem. And it's a problem we already see in Adam Smith. Is the pursuit of self-interest a good thing in and of itself? Is the pursuit of self-interest moral? Is it ethical? Well, the way most of us are brought up, the answer to that is no. And indeed, Adam Smith says it's not particularly noble, it's not particularly good. But when everybody does it in a marketplace, it results in a good society, in a good outcome, in a wealthier society. But the actual act of pursuing one's own self-interest is at best considered amoral, and at worst considered immoral. So we have a system we call capitalism, free markets, that everybody knows, and you can't hide this because it's so evident, is about the pursuit of self-interest. And yet we live in a moral code, with a moral code, that says self-interest is bad. What is good? What is noble? What is virtuous? What do our moral teachers teach us is good and noble and virtuous? Yeah, care for others. Be selfless, not selfish. Selfless, not pursue your self-interest, pursue other people's interests. And the more you sacrifice for them, the more you put yourself down, the better. The more noble, the more virtuous. So helping others is the sign of virtue. At least that's what we're taught. But even that is not completely true. Who do you think has helped mankind? What profession has benefited mankind more than any other profession? What activity? What activity helps? What's that? Art. Okay, she's taking us to. There's a sense in which that's true, but there's also, I'm talking about materially benefit. So let's limit it to materially benefit. What profession has benefited mankind materially more than any other profession?
Manufacturers.
Yeah, business people. Without business, I mean, we were all poor 250 years ago. And then the Industrial Revolution happened, and freedom happened. Capitalism, some capitalism happened. Business happened. Suddenly, we're rich. Life expectancy is more than doubled. Life is dramatically better from a material perspective. Not because of charity, not because of community service, not because of people helping others, but people seeking profit, people seeking self-interest, and therefore achieving incredible success and benefiting all of us as a consequence. And yet, what do we think of businessmen? Morally, ethically, what's the general feeling out there about businessmen, millionaires and billionaires? We hate them. We hate them why? Because they're obviously pursuing their own self-interest. Even though the only way to become a billionaire, how do you become a billionaire? What's the secret to becoming a billionaire? Yeah, you look real, right? No, the secret to becoming a billionaire is easy. Applying it is hard. But the idea is easy. How do you become a billionaire?
You make something everybody wants.
Now you make something everybody wants, and is willing to pay you more than it costs you to produce, and is willing to buy it over and over and over and over again. Why would somebody do that? Why would somebody be willing to pay you money for something that you produce? Why am I willing to pay $1,000 for the iPhone? Why? How much of a value is it to me? If I'm willing to pay $1,000 for the iPhone, how much of a value to me is the iPhone? This is Econ 101. Should be. How much is it worth to me? More than $1,000. In my case, tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds. I don't know exactly how to put a number on it, but a lot more than $1,000. So I'm better off from buying an iPhone for $1,000 because this is worth more than $1,000. Apple, worse off. Also better off. That's the beauty of markets. Win-win. Both parties are better off. To become a billionaire, you have to make hundreds of millions of people out there better off. The only way to become a billionaire is to make the world a better place in a market, assuming you're not stealing it. Putin is a billionaire not from doing this, but from stealing. But in a market, the only way to become a billionaire is by making the lives of hundreds of millions of people better. And you know their lives are better because they've shown you their lives are better. They're willing to give up cash for the value that you have produced. Billionaires have made the world dramatically better. And yet we hate them. When do we like billionaires? When do billionaires become a little nicer? We kind of tolerate them now. When they become philanthropists. When they stop making stuff. When they stop producing. When they stop being business people and they leave business and they start a foundation. And then they start giving money away. How many lives are they changing when they give the money away? I mean, a lot, but not as many as when they were in business. The business has really changed the world. Philanthropy, it makes a difference, but it's not that big of a difference. And yet, when they're philanthropists, we love them. When they're businessmen, we hate them. And many businessmen themselves are more proud of their philanthropy than they are of their business, which is tragic. Why? Because the one, they help people, yes, but they benefit. And that's a no-no. Morally, we're not allowed to benefit. But when they give it away, they're not benefiting. They're not saints. We don't consider them saints. Why aren't they saints? What would a billionaire have to do to become a saint? You have to give it all away, maybe move into a tent, and maybe bleed a little. You'd have to show pain. You'd have to show some suffering. Because that's, to be a saint, it's not enough to help other people. You have to suffer. You have to show that you sacrifice in a concrete way. Because that is what we morally, ethically value. Now that morality is not consistent with capitalism. It's not consistent with freedom. It's not consistent with free markets. It's consistent with socialism. Lots of sacrifice in socialism. Lots of pain in socialism. Lots of sacrificing some for others. So, in my view, the battle for capitalism is not about economics and politics. We won the economic battle. I really think that it's over. We've got answers to all the challenges from the economics perspective. The battle for capitalism is a philosophical. It's an ethical. It's about the moral code that the culture holds. This is what makes it 1,000 times more difficult than if it was just economics. Economics, I think, is relatively easy to convince somebody, but to change their moral code, to change a culture's moral code is more difficult. And this, I think, is the importance of Ayn Rand. This is the work Ayn Rand did in presenting an alternative ethical code to the common one, to the one that's prevalent in our culture. For Ayn Rand, the idea of goodness is not about sacrifice. It's not about helping others. Goodness is about what you do with your life. Goodness is about living the best life you can live for yourself. In a sense, what she's doing is resurrecting Aristotle's virtue ethics. The idea that virtue is to make you a great person for the purpose of your own happiness. Happiness is the goal, not other people. Your own happiness. Other people might be, some of the virtues might relate to other people, but it's not all about other people, and certainly it's not about sacrifice. It's about pursuing your life, figuring out what values you want, and using the one means by which we are human, using the tool that makes us human to achieve those values, and that is using human reason, the human mind. So for Rand, self-interest is not a vice. Self-interest is a virtue. when it's guided by reason, when it is rational, when it is self-interest of a human being to live as a human being, that is to live as a rational animal, which was Aristotle's definition of what human beings, of what man is. So she offers us an alternative moral code to the prevalent one out there. One that is consistent with capitalism. Capitalism is ultimately an economic system built on a foundation of people pursuing self-interest. And for Rand, self-interest is morality, is what it means to be good, doing it well, doing it right. And it turns out that all the stories about being self-interested means lying, cheating, stealing, being nasty to other people, it's just not true. It's just not in your self-interest to lie. Some of you have probably tried lying a few times in your life. I'm not going to ask how many. It's not a good strategy for living a good life. Stealing, cheating, and in jail. But even beyond that, it destroys your ability to think, reason, your ability to be human. To be self-interested is to be guided by reason towards values, to produce, to create, to build, to make values, to trade with other people, not to exploit them and not to sacrifice to them, but to produce and trade, win-win. I buy an iPhone, I win, and Apple wins as well. That's the beauty of trade, win-win. Now, if we lived in a culture where people were pursuing their self-interest, where people cared about their own happiness, where people want to engage in win-win transactions for their own benefit, then convincing them of the benefits of capitalism is easy. As somebody with self-esteem who wants to pursue my own life, my own happiness, I don't want another government on my shoulder telling me what I can and cannot do, what I can and cannot eat, what I can and cannot drink, what business I can and cannot open. I want to be free. I want to be left alone to use my money to pursue my values. Capitalism is an outcome of a culture that is focused on personal responsibility, which in the deepest sense means responsibility for your own happiness and your own life. And that's the kind of culture we must foster if we hope to achieve capitalism. And without such a culture, and we don't live in such a culture, we live in a culture that is focused on a morality of altruism, even though they don't live it, because you can't live it. They view capitalism as an evil idea because morally they view it as consistent with their view of morality. So what we need is not so much a political revolution or economic revolution, we need a moral revolution. And only such a revolution, I think, will ultimately lead us to the economic political revolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's also a pleasure introducing you our second guest speaker, Professor Giovanni Barone Adesi, a professor of finance here at the University of the Italian Institute in Switzerland, Università della Svizzera Italiana. And I hand over the word to him for his speech, and then also follow the discussion among you.
Thank you. I think Yaron has done an excellent job of illustrating American perspective on capitalism. And I would like to highlight its philosophical origins, which are, in my opinion, the reason for which it is so unpopular in continental Europe, especially France. That maybe will be helpful to try to bridge the gap between the two sides of the Atlantic. So, leaving alone Aristotle, because we always things to do tonight, let's start with Hobbes. So essentially what Hobbes says, probably everybody has a form of lupus, is that individuals are governed by self-interest, and the law essentially reflects the contracts they establish to survive. So the idea, which is really the far root of modern capitalism, is quite clear. We will be killing each other except that there is a law enforced by the state, the government, not terms, which essentially allows us to survive. And so we accept. Next step is Ayn Smith, which has already been mentioned. He finds that within this framework we can achieve prosperity. So this invisible hand to which we have referred. The final point, at least among the classics, is Stuart Mills, about 150 years ago, who goes a bit beyond Smith. He talks about the pursuit of happiness. So, the idea underlying this evolution is that we must glean from the experience in the society what laws are supposed to be. So the legislator should learn from the society. So it's not so much that we have to change our law. What we should refuse is the state to tell us what the law has to do. And this is something that continental Europeans are not ready to accept. Why? Because the revolution has been based on the most group of intellectuals which advise the movement of the common good. They're supposed to be selfish. Of course, you know that all European intellectuals, especially politics, are selfish. But basically, they do not use or let the common people learn anything. Although we always make reference to the French Revolution. And the American Revolution was much more democratic. So they could shape the difference. So essentially, we tend to follow the normative approach. So it is the elite which tells the government what is our goal. The American approach, which is common in the American capitalism, at least all American capitalism, is that the government should observe what kind of contracts people like to have among themselves. And there is no natural legal doctrine. We can call it legal doctrine if we want something that almost everybody agrees on. Probably in this room, almost everybody agrees that the earth is round, it's not flat. But of course, we cannot say that everybody will necessarily pass through that. So the issue is not that we cannot have a morality or that we have to change our morality. That may be part of our happiness in this world, in this sense. What we have to say that the government has no special business to tell us what society morality is. It has just to extrapolate from the wishes of people. Now, until we are able to overcome our humanistic bias, the idea of letting business people, economists, to decide what's good for us is quite compelling to European culture. And that's the reason for which, although many people, especially in the lower social classes, envy the American success, European society by and large are quite reluctant to accept everything that you have said. So that's all I want to say. Maybe we can have a discussion on these themes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just comment. I wish it was that simple. That is, I wish that the American society was as far away from European society as you present. But I think it's becoming much more similar to Europe over time. But I'd say the fundamental difference, the way I see it, is that the American society traditionally, in its past, and it's in founding in the American Revolution, as compared to the French Revolution, is that America is focused on the individual and on the individual's right to be left alone, to live his life as he sees fit, and the role of the state is to protect him, and other than that, leave him alone. And over the years, it keeps intervening, and it's learned from Europe how to become more and more interventionist. So the philosophical root of America is individualism. And maybe one of the thinkers you skipped a lot, but the one major one would be John Locke. Because, again, another British one may be why, as you suggested, the French hate capitalism, because all the thinkers were British. But John Locke, of course, talks about individual rights, and he talks about property rights, and that the job of government is the protection of those property rights. And to me, that essentially is capitalism. Capitalism is a system where those rights are protected, and that's what the government does, and it's all the government does. Europe, on the other hand, is grounded in a collectivistic approach. The individual doesn't matter. What matters is the group, and it depends what group, but the group is what matters. States, in the state or the ethnic group, if you're in the Balkans, it's the ethnic group, which is the state. So it's the state that what matters. The group is what matters. And the individual, if he needs to be sacrificed for the sake of the group, that's fine. If he needs to be taxed and regulated and controlled for the sake of the group, that's fine. So Europe is fundamentally collectivistic, and it always has been in its history. And the French Revolution was a collectivist revolution. It was about classes. It was about groups. It was about, you were judged to be good or bad based on your group membership, not on your individual virtue. And the goal was egalitarianism. The goal was equality. It wasn't individual liberty, which is the exact opposite of the American Revolution. So these two revolutions are opposite of one another. The French is the bad one. The American is the good one, in the sense that the American leads to individual liberty and therefore to capitalism and freedom. And the French leads to greater state involvement and to socialism and to elevating the group above the individual. And we see that right now in the war in Russia. I mean, what is the war in Russia at least presented as being about? It's about the unity of something mystical called the Russian people, and Russian land, and Russian empire, and Russian greatness, or whatever the hell that is, right? And as many people can be sacrificed as necessary. It doesn't matter. And tens of thousands of Russians are dying right now. Russian kids, the age of the students here. For what? And do they know for what? For some grand vision of Russia that Putin and some Russian philosophers have in their head. Maybe it's all about natural resources, but you can't sell that. So what's sold is Russia. And again, the individual doesn't matter, and that of course leads always to war. When the individual doesn't matter, it's just a group that creates conflict. That's a zero-sum game. That's how we get wars. Questions from the audience, maybe.
Relating to that, what's your opinion about the legal origin, maybe between Europe and the Anglo-Saxon countries? So Commonwealth law versus civil law. And connected to that, because this is also the alternative explanation, the economics of warfare during the First and especially the Second World War, which might also explain some systematic differences among countries in the world.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I try a short answer, then you add something else. So basically, the Anglo-Saxon approach is a positive approach. You learn from the way the society organizes itself. The European approach started with just improving the Hammurabi. If we want to go further, that is more based on normative approach. It is the wise man or the wise men who decide what's good for you. You have no business questioning what they decide.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's really there's a sense in which the European approach is a Platonic approach in the sense of the philosopher king. It's all top down. They decide what's good for you. Now, in the question of law, I think ultimately the ideal legal system is a combination of both. I don't think everything can be common law or everything can be. But you learn the principles from experience, and then you legislate them. And then you establish them kind of as a set. That would be the ideal, and that's more of the Anglo-Saxon methodology. But again, I think the fundamental here is that the Anglo-Saxons are focused on the individual and his liberties, and the European model is focused on the collective, however we want to define that collective and organization. And then with regard to war, I mean, I think it's interesting that so many economists see something valuable in war. That is, that war somehow is some value or a good thing, war-wise. Um, war is a lose-lose proposition. War is destructive on all fronts. Everybody loses in a war. And even the idea that is sometimes said, well, the United States benefited from World War II. No, I mean, the United States would have been a lot richer if there'd never been a war, right? If Germany was peaceful and Italy, if the whole world was peaceful and we could just trade there, we would all be so much richer today than we were. That is, war is always a net loss. There's no economic winners, right? There might be short-term economic winners, but long-term there are no economic winners in warfare. And of course, economics is just one dimension of war. There's also the lost lives, the lost future productivity of the lost lives, other people who live. So war is truly devastating from an economic perspective and very difficult to recover from. And again, I think only collectivistic societies and only statist societies that view the state, um, engage in war. Individualistic societies avoid war at almost any cost because of how destructive to human life and to human prosperity and to human success wars actually are. So war should be engaged in for self-defense, but otherwise, um, they are always destructive.
Was it also like that in the past, like before the Renaissance, that the wars were all destructive? Because I know that like in the past, the way to become rich as a nation was to conquer, like Rome and other countries.
Yeah, I don't think that Rome became rich because it conquered. I think when Rome became rich was by establishing a uniform system of law across a vast geographic area and facilitating trade within that area, free trade within that area. So what made the Roman Empire rich was not the conquering, it was the ability to trade. So the conquering facilitated that. You could argue the conquering made it all uniform law and therefore we could trade. But the thing that makes you rich is the trade. And if you can do that without conquering, like, God forbid I say this, but the European Union, where now you can trade across the entire continent without barriers and without war, without Germany having to conquer the entire of Europe. But you can trade, then that's where you get the benefit from. That's true of any era. Now, in an era where we're all poor, And when there's very little to trade, the value is smaller. You can only become so rich. But as we're producing more and there's more value to trade, the ability to trade freely becomes enormously valuable, and the wealth created from it becomes huge. And of course, then the destructive power of war is even greater because there's so much more to lose.
Why do you need to adopt the Marxist definition from capitalism instead to stay on a more natural definition like free market or market?
So I'm fine with calling it free markets. I think free markets is a little limiting because I think capitalism is bigger than just free markets. My definition of free markets is a social, political, economic system in which the only job of government is the protection of individual rights, primarily property rights, and in which all property is privately owned. So that's what I consider capitalism. We don't like the word capitalism because it's linked to Marx. We can change the word. I don't really care that much. What I care about is the idea. And the idea is the separation of state from economics. Capitalism is about the state not having any voice in economic policy and economic decisions. Economics is about us trading with one another, contracting with one another, making decisions with one another. You want to call that free markets? I don't really care. I think capitalism is a pretty cool word. It comes from capital, which in Latin means something related to the mind. So it's kind of a nice word. The fact that Marx kind of popularized it, I don't think should deter us from using it. And what Marx was observing around him was indeed capitalism, and Marx was honest enough to recognize that it was capitalism that was producing all the wealth that was being produced in Europe at the time.
Perhaps there is a room of confusion that you pointed out, because of course the largest capitalists in today's world are Xi Jinping and Putin. So all the societies always have a problem of managing their economic capital. Capitalism in that sense is present everywhere. What we are talking about, of course, is the Western interpretation of capitalism, which is understood in Europe and North America. I don't know if you can call it free market, because certainly we do not have a total free market either. So maybe we should call it Anglo-Saxon capitalism. Now that the French would be very upset.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to separate capitalists from capitalism. Capitalists are financiers, and every country has financiers, and sometimes the government serves as the financier. Capitalism is a system. And, I think if you look at what we associate with capitalism, the countries become closer to capitalism, what is unique to them is the protection of property rights. What's unique to them is freedom, not the existence of Wall Street, not the existence of capitalists. That exists. There were money lenders here in eras way before there was capitalism. Capitalism is the system where property rights are protected, and that's the only job of it. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is there a morality in capitalism? Like, where morality stands in capitalism? Say right now, like, when it was at the beginning, state and very some other people, also in many ways, people do not understand morality in
Thanks. I think there is no morality in capitalism. There is morality in capitalist societies. And that stems from the fact that our limited definition of capitalism has to do a lot with democratic representation and individual freedoms. So, Europe or in North America, lobbies where, not necessarily bad lobbies, you can think of trade unions or churches or whatever, charities or lobbies. try to find support for their ideas. That's the reason for which it's important to have a debate, a strong democratic debate about these issues. So capitalism as such doesn't tell you what the society should do. It does not mean that the society should ignore what the common feelings of the people in the problem.
Yeah, so my vision of capitalism is different in that I believe that government should have no power over our economic lives, and as such, nobody should lobby because government should have no power to hand out. That all economic decisions and economic relationships should be determined in the marketplace. I agree that there is no such capitalist place in the world today. But that is the ideal that I would like to strive for. And in terms of morality, that's what my talk was about. That is the idea that I think our morality as societies in the world today contradicts the morality implicit in capitalism. That is, there is an implicit morality in capitalism. Implicit morality in capitalism is this idea of self-interest. And because we live in societies that reject the self-interest, that view it as a negative, as something bad, I think as a consequence we also throw out capitalism. And that's why, in my view, what we need is to change our view of morality in order to, if we want capitalism, that is the two related. Rand once said that she was pro-capitalism because she was fundamentally because she was pro-rational egoism, and she was pro-rational egoism because she was pro-reason, and that it all derives from human beings being the rational animal, and that a means of survival is using a reasoning mind. And those are philosophical concepts that are just not acceptable, not accepted in our societies, neither in America today nor in Europe. And I think that capitalism arose out of a world, out of an enlightenment, where these ideas were more acceptable, where at least people were starting to think about them. The Declaration of Independence in America doesn't say we should strive for the common good. There's no common good there. But there is individual happiness. There is the pursuit of happiness. So I think America arose out of the sense of individualism and the individual's pursuit of happiness. And that has faded. That has gone away, and America has become less and less capitalist over time. Any other questions? Yeah.
Question for Mr. Adesi. If I understood you right, you said there's two common foundations for law, the way it's seen. If I correctly understand, one is basically looking at what people consider to be right and calling that into law. And the other is basically finding some wise people that will say what is right and what is to be right in society. But if those are, when I think about it, just looking at what people already do and considering that as foundation for law, that leads to traditionalism in law. And if I look at the other group and just say some wise people making laws, which ultimately leads to those dominating the culture and basically being a self-perpetuating circle, that creates a dogmatic foundation for law.
As I said, in a capitalist society, the way I understand it, it's very important that there be a strong democratic political debate. So, of course, you or anybody else can try to find support for your ideas. And once we have enough support, of course, it becomes common enough. So the positive law is not fixed over time. So that's the way it works. While in a more New society, government decides that they have to do the great thing ahead, and even they need the Russian world. we don't count how many of you are in favor or against.
So, if do I understand that the way that if it could suppose, for example, pro-capitalist shift in the culture in the U.S., you would expect a change in or the corresponding change in law. If you did the same in Europe, you might not get it because the government will still decide what is good for the people.
Yeah, this is roughly simplified. Of course, the US is not perfectly capitalist, or Europe is not socialist. Although a French friend of mine who lived a long time in the US says he doesn't talk to his father, for his father is believing he's a liberal, but he's a socialist.
Yeah, I think that in a proper capitalist society, law would always be governed by one principle, and that is the principle of individual rights. That's in quotes of John Locke. That is, that law that violated rights would automatically be excluded. That's why you have kind of a constitution in the Supreme Court excluded, and the laws that are approved would have to be consistent with protecting individual rights. So there would always be a standard, and that standard is gone. It doesn't exist in the United States. The Constitution, I think, is to a large extent being watered down in the United States, and most European countries don't have constitutions focused on this idea of individual rights. It's interesting that it's like Japan after World War II, its constitution was written for it by General MacArthur, the American, and he basically copied a lot of features from the American Constitution. For example, there's the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the Constitution in Japan. And to a large extent, Japan's success and Japan's move towards more freedom and more liberty and individualism shift, I think, is a result of living under a constitution they never chose. And they didn't really want, but it was forced on them by the American occupier post World War II. So they have a pretty good constitution, even though they didn't want it.
We may add that really the emperor forced them to listen to the Americans. And the idea of exporting our values, if you don't have somebody like the emperor of Japan supporting it in Japan, often does not work. We have tried very much to export democracy to other countries, and the results are not big brilliant.
Any other questions? Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, I just have a question about ethical egoism. So, do you have any right or duties, even though you're not to say you're sacrificing for other people, but if I bring a product to market and I know it will make other people unhappy, they think they're getting a good deal, they're just too stupid. Do I have any? Is this perfectly fine on the Randian?
So I think it's not perfectly fine from a moral perspective,
Ah,
but from a legal perspective, so legal perspective,
so where
the
do
state
you,
has no involvement.
yeah, so where do you get the ethical principles from?
The ethical principle is from the Rand's virtue of productiveness, and the idea is that that to live as a human being is to produce, and to produce is to create real values. Values, what does real values mean? Values means things that enhance human life. And if you're producing things that actually hurt human life, you're not producing values. You're not enhancing your life, and you're not enhancing other people's life. Indeed, Rand would argue that's a lose-lose proposition. So in a free market, right? Let's say there are no drug laws, and you produce and you sell heroin to the masses, right? For Rand, that is not a productive activity. You're not expressing the virtue of productiveness because what you're creating is a disvalue, not a value.
So this is very interesting. So your own self-interest depends on the fact that the things that you create have value to other people.
Well, yes, but of course the value, yes, absolutely. Your own self-interest depends on that. I mean, as a businessman, you know that if you produce something that other people don't want and don't like, you're not going to make a living. So of course your self-interest, but even to the objective nature of those values, that is that they're objectively pro-life, Your self-interest depends on that. Yes. And if you read her essay, "What is Capitalism?" she talks about that and the importance of that. Sure. There's a question here.
Yes. We haven't talked yet about, like, about China,
Good question.
because I think one of these mentioned something into there, but it's a country that is communist, yet past 50 years has shifted to a sort of free market, and they don't go to war, they trade, as you mentioned. You're better off if you trade instead of going to war. Yet, like capitalists, we don't pay China. Why?
So China's tricky, right? So I've been to China many times, and I find it to be one of the most exciting places on the planet. I don't hate China. I hate the Chinese government, but I don't hate China. I actually, in many regards, love China and was very optimistic about its chances to actually become even greater. And not anymore. I've become much more pessimistic about China over the last 5 years. So what happened in China? I mean, it's an interesting history, right? And I don't think China's communist today. I mean, China's maybe fascist, but certainly not. The state controls business, but it doesn't own the means of production. So in no way is China socialist. It has a political party called the Communist Party. That's about the closest thing it has to communism. And in his speech, I think Xi recently, he mentions Marx, but nothing in the speech was Marxist, even though he mentions Marx in his commitment to Marx. So it's more propaganda. China was obviously this incredibly poor, over a billion people in extreme poverty, all socialized, complete real communism. I mean, everything was socialized. When Deng Xiaoping came to power, and for basically pragmatic reasons, I don't think for ideological reasons, they liberated or freed up parts of China, allowed certain provinces to create free markets tentatively, right? Not officially. So let them pretend they have let them pretend they have property rights. There's no constitution protecting property rights. There's no laws protecting property rights. But you can pretend, we'll treat you as if you have property rights. And what happens is when you give people freedom, even a little bit, and you let them feel like they have property rights, they will produce and they will create a massive amount of abundance. And what's happened in China is the free market model was moved from state to state within China, and everywhere it was tried. Explosion of wealth creation happened. Truly amazing. If you ever have an opportunity to go to China, it's spectacular. Shanghai and particularly south, west, east of China, Hong Kong, unbelievable. The wealth that's been created there. It's real. It's not a fantasy, as some people try to present it. And at the same time, the government wanted to maintain control. So Deng Xiaoping and then the people who followed him all wanted to maintain control, Xi more than anybody else. So they had state-run businesses. They had parts of the economy that were completely state-run, completely socialist. Of course, those parts of the economy held everything back and suppressed economic growth. So economic growth in China could have even been bigger, could have been even more than that. Almost all the economic growth in China came from the private sector. Almost none of it, could only negative economic growth came from the government sector. What's happened though over the last 5, 6, 7 years is that it started to shift. That is, the government is more and more intervening in markets, more and more trying to control them, more and more penalizing the billionaires and going after them, trying to control the parts of the economy that they've left free. As they do that, we've seen the economic growth in China decline. I think they're probably in recession right now. And we've seen that the central party try to maintain more and more, this is why I call it fascist, more and more top-down type control over the economy as we move into Xi's term. And I expect that to continue. I expect that to get worse. So China's moving away. As it moves away from that, I think it will become more militaristic and more dangerous. So if you'd asked me 7 years ago, I would have said we should trade with China, we should do everything with China. China's amazing, and then moving towards more liberty and more freedom because it felt that way and it looked that way. All of Ayn Rand's books are translated to Chinese. All of Mises' books, all of Hayek's books, all Milton Friedman, everything is in Chinese, and they sell in the bookstore. And there used to be think tanks and liberal think tanks and free market think tanks and great people fighting for these ideas. There was a Hayek Society. There was a Beijing University. There was an Ayn Rand Society at a Beijing University. And then about in 2019 was the last time I was there. Everything was being shut down. The university professors were being fired. The think tanks were being closed. All the think tanks are gone now. The university professors are silent. They're not allowed to speak. And all that liberty and freedom is disappearing from China. And as it does, I believe that they talk more militantly, so the potential for violence increases. And I'm more pessimistic about China. So I don't think we've always hated China. Partially we hate China because we hate trade, we hate success. They look different than us. It's a good scapegoat, right? If America needs a reason why economic growth in America is not as fast as it should be, blame the Chinese and the Mexicans and anybody else that looks differently than you is blamed. That was Trump's strategy, is blame the other. But I think more fundamentally, China's changing. China's becoming more authoritarian, and that's a good reason. The Italians, I don't know if to call you Italians or not, some Italians in the room, but Italy was the first to learn from China how to do lockdowns, and then the rest of the world followed. That was not a good lesson to learn. It's an authoritarian lesson, and there's a sense in which the world is becoming China, and not that China becoming like the rest of the world. So that's a sad development. I don't know if that answers your question. Yep.
What's your stand about the political capitalism? So it's when the big business and the government go hand in hand, which is basically what is actually happening worldwide, which is also driven by selfishness and then empowered by the powers of government.
So I don't believe it's driven by selfishness because I have a different definition of selfishness, which is much more limited. I think it's driven by power, by hunger for power, which I don't think is selfish. I think hunger for power is actually bad for you. So it's not good for you to seek power. But I don't call it political capitalism. I don't have something capitalism because I think capitalism is a particular system, and every deviation from it is statist. Almost everything is statist. And I think this is statist. So-called political capitalism is what I call cronyism. And I think it's terrible. I think it's anti-liberty, anti-freedom, anti-business in the end, if you understand what business really is. It's bad business to seek government help and to work with government. And I think defending capitalism is rejecting cronyism, and this is why, to me, capitalism is separation of state from economics. And if you separate state from economics, then there's no reason to lobby the state, because the state has no power over economic interests. And the only way to eliminate political economics, to eliminate lobbying and corporations getting involved in politics, is to give politicians no power, zero power over economics. So as soon as you start giving them power, antitrust laws was maybe the first big law in the United States that gave the state power over economics. As soon as you do that, you're finished. In a sense, it's a slippery slope, and from there, you get more lobbying and more controls and more government.
How do you prevent that?
I think by having a constitution that separates states from economics. So I would like, if I rewrote the American Constitution, if I could be so bold as to rewrite the American Constitution, I would have 4 separations. I would keep the separation of church from state, which exists. I would just strengthen it, and I would make it the separation of state from ideas. I don't think the state should be involved in religion or any ideas. It should be there to protect individual rights, and that's it. Second, I would separate state from economics. Third, I would separate state from education, which may be the most important one. And fourth, I would separate state from science. COVID, global, climate change, I think are good examples where state has corrupted science. And where again you get cronyism, but in science. And of course, education, we know, it's state and science. So I would want to see those separations by law in a constitution, and then hopefully we live up to that constitution.
I am a modest economist, so I have less ambitious goals. I think that just try to have a lot of transparency so that people can follow what is going on, the side, when people getting many subsidies or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is that we have transparency in a lot of countries, and still, it doesn't stop. Right? So Tesla gets all the subsidies, you know, so there's a lot of alternative energy stuff. So there's things that fail, and then there's big newspaper stories that you think this will cause people to change, and nothing changes. And then you get politicians coming into office, and they're very poor when they start out in politics, and then when they leave politics, they're suddenly rich. And I know, you know, maybe that's in Italy you expect that, but in the United States you don't, and you still get it, and you go, how did they become rich? They're just being in politics. So the corruption is everywhere. We all know it, and it's very difficult to change without again changing the culture, without changing the people, and that's the more ambitious goal. That's why I think you have to be ambitious because the narrow aims we failed. You had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the discourse around capitalism and the relationship that it has with self-interest. I don't think that Ayn Rand meant that self-interest should be ruthless or reckless. It just has to impact you directly. If you treat other people bad, if you maybe do something that in the short term is positive for you, but ultimately negative for other people, then that's going to bite you in the end. It's going to come to you. So it would be like having friends and then mistreat them constantly. Eventually, these friends will leave you unless you have like some authority that is constantly buying more friends, which is what the government does to corrupt businesses or whatever. But I also wanted to ask about democracy. Why would capitalism be in favor of democracy or democratic systems when democratic systems have, given us socialism, like in Venezuela, it was mentioned before. Socialism was democratically elected in Zimbabwe, Mugabe, and other more tragic, other circumstances. Democracy has played a role in socialism. Why would we?
Well, it's statism overall. I mean, the fact is that the populace supports state intervention in the economy. We're unpopular. It's not. It's not that the populace likes the system we have. We don't. So yes, democracy is a problem if it's unlimited. And so the question now is, how do you limit it? And what limitations do you place on it? And this is what the American Constitution tries to do. And this is what the American system of government tries to do. It tries to limit what you can vote on. You can elect representatives, but those representatives can't violate your rights. They can vote on things, but they can't violate your rights. Now, it's not as clear cut as that in the American Constitution, and that's why, and there's not enough of an understanding in the culture of what rights are. So that's why we've drifted away from the Constitution. But the intent, if you read Madison, if you read the founders of America, if you read what they wrote about them, the intent was to allow you to vote for representatives, not directly vote on issues, just to vote for representatives, but to limit the power of those representatives so they couldn't violate your rights. They couldn't do things, for example, intervene in the economy, certain type. For example, income taxes in the United States were ruled by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional over and over and over again through the 19th century and early 20th century. So that the only reason America has a income tax today is because the Constitution was changed. In 1913, there was a constitutional amendment that added the ability to have an income tax. Even though people voted for an income tax, and the legislature voted for an income tax, they couldn't pass it because the Supreme Court said no. So that's the role of a proper constitution, is to limit so that democracy only applies to your selection of representatives, but what they can do is limited in terms of how it can impact your life.
We have to be a bit careful about this. Take Turkey. Putin decided that Turkey needed to be a democracy. And out of desperation, Turkey decided that Yaron would be in charge of protecting democracy. They worked more or less well for 80 years. But then still there was not democratic culture, and they decided to take a different road. And similar experiences are happening in North Africa for much shorter time scales. So when we talk of limiting democracy because of respect for individual rights, we have to decide what kind of limits will be appropriate, who's going to oppose them, and anyway, nothing will work if the culture of the people is different.
Yeah, I think that's the most important point, is it doesn't matter what system you construct, it won't work if the culture is not there. I mean, coming out of the Constitutional Convention, I think somebody asked Franklin, what did you guys do? You know, and he said, we established a republic if you can keep it, right? If you can live up to it. If the culture will accept it and will live up to it. So, and it hasn't in America. We can come up with all kinds of political theories. At the end of the day, the culture has to want those. And that's why, to me, the battle for capitalism is an educational battle. It's about teaching people, it's motivating people to care about this and to want it and to be willing to fight intellectually for it. Now, just say about your point about self-interest, you have to be careful because you don't want to water it down so that it means nothing. She really did mean self-interest. She meant rational, long-term self-interest, and she really did mean that. There's a danger of watering down what she meant to kind of be nice. And sometimes to be self-interested is not to be nice. Sometimes you're self-interested. As a business, sometimes you fire employees, and they're worse off in the short run. And maybe in the long run, they're worse off. But that's what you have to do. So you have to be careful not to try to position it as too, in the back, in the white shirt.
What do you think about the idea of monetary policies in your idea of capitalism? So do we need a central bank?
Do we need a central bank?
Centralization of credit in your idea of capitalism or something else?
Well, I mean, if I believe in the separation of state from economics, how can you have a central bank? I mean, the government has no role in economics. Well, central bank is a pretty big piece of economics. That's how they control the most important thing that we do, which is our means of exchange, our medium of exchange, money. So no, I do not believe we should have a central bank. I believe in private banking, in private currency. I think the currency will ultimately, and I know I'm going to disappoint the young people here, but I think it will ultimately be gold, not crypto. Although it will probably have a crypto manifestation. It will be coins backed by gold, but let them compete. I don't know what the right currency is. I don't know what the right money is. Let the market determine what the money is. The market historically determined it as gold. Maybe it'll be different in the future. I don't know. I'm not a central planner. So yes, it should be private, and I do think you'll have some big banks, and I like banks, so I like credit. And I'm not anti-fractional reserve banking, if there were terms in here, so I'm not against fractional reserve banking. If it's disclosed, if it's part of the contract you have, so as long as it's not fraudulent.
There is only one American senator who always asks in the Senate to abolish the Federal Reserve. Senator Rand,
Ron Paul, Congressman.
Congress decided. So basically, central banks built a lot of prestige. The Federal Reserve started when there was a big plan, 1906, if I'm not wrong. Uh, so people put some confidence in that. Lately, they've been doing a terrible job. So now we are supposed to try to blame Yaron, Brook, whatever. Although many politicians and economists, even democratic economists, were telling Mr. Bush already last year that he was overdoing. So clearly, it's a tool of government which is created to mean well. That it does whatever politics dictate. That is risky, exactly like Xi Jinping opening the markets and closing them. We cannot rely on it.
And I would just say, and I think you'll agree, that the Federal Reserve has been pretty bad from the beginning. I mean, the first big thing that it did was the Great Depression.
Although it was before.
It was founded in 1914. The crisis was 1907. They didn't like that J.P. Morgan solved the crisis privately. So they established the Federal Reserve so now the government could get involved. And then the first big event that happened was the Great Depression, which the Federal Reserve, if you believe Milton Friedman and others, caused and made much worse.
Yes.
So they've never been a success. They've always been a disaster. And they've got a lot of prestige built on nothing. And it's truly, stunning how people still hold on to these central banks in spite of the fact that they've been such failures. I was on a panel in London over the last weekend, and it was a panel about the European Union. I was attending. I wasn't on the panel, and there was an Italian economist on the panel, and the Italian economist was saying, there's this crisis in Europe right now. What Italy needs right now is its own central bank so that we can get out of the crisis. And I'm thinking, if Italy had its own central bank right now, Italy's inflation would be 100, 200, 1,000%. It would be much worse. At least you have the Germans running your monetary policy, so inflation won't get that bad. But if the Italians were running a monetary policy, we know from history what happens.
It really comes down to the illusion of control. We like to control nature, be it climate change, or money supply, or whatever. So we establish some institutions which are supposed to solve our problems. Whether they're able to do it or not is not so good, like when the baby takes a pacifier. It's quiet, but probably does not really solve any disease.
I think there was another question there back there. You. Yeah.
Yeah, I still love this thing. I was just asking, so if it was the case that me lying was in my self-interest, it's just the contingent fact that in business and all of this, telling the truth is the way to go. But if it was the case that I could just get ahead by lying, would it just be fun?
So if the nature of human beings was different than this is exactly the point. If the nature of human beings was different and the nature of reality was different, would we have a different moral system? Yes.
Okay, so it's very interesting. So the reason to be truthful in all of this is rooted in the nature of the human being itself as rationale.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Think about, just an indication of the direction. Think about the fact that what does rationality mean? Rationality means the acceptance of facts and reality. And the dealing of facts and reality. It's abstracting from facts and reality. Lying is unfacts, bad facts, untruths. It corrupts the machinery of thinking. So by its very nature, it's corrupting of rationality.
Yeah, if you lie, sooner or later you'll be found out. in this way. We have this problem always with evaluating managers of public purpose. Of course, no manager who is at 30 years old will have a successful career until he's 70 or life. The problem is in the last point. There is a terminal value problem. If when you're ready to retire, you're still 1 billion, or you still 1 billion, and then you retire. Of course, the capitalist system itself, the market system, cannot do much about it. So that is left to the legal system. So we try to help those that will make you top up the man.
Yeah, I would say that psychologically it's probably pretty destructive to you. You know you sold it earlier, so it's still not in your sight. Any other questions?
I like the term error correction, and I'm wondering if you think that much is capitalists
Yeah, I think it's a really good term when that comparison, because in socialism there's no mechanism for error correction. Or the process for error correction is top down. The people at the top, since they manage it, they have to realize there's an error, and then they have to filter down a fix for it. Whereas capitalism is constantly error correcting, because you're constantly getting feedback. And of course, where do you get the feedback from? You get the feedback from the pricing mechanism. Price is a constant feedback for you. You get feedback from finance. We're both finance professors. I was a finance professor in the previous life. And the beauty of finance, one of the great virtues of financial markets is they're providing information. What do the really smart people think about this? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it moving in the right direction? Is it moving in the wrong direction? That's incredible. It's an incredible mechanism for error correction, finances. And it's underappreciated to what extent that kind of helps get companies and industries and economies on the right path. Think about entrepreneurship. Think about failure. Failure is an is error correction, right? To fail is to learn. This doesn't work, so you do something different. So error correction is incredibly vital and incredibly dynamic within a capitalist, which means a free market.
Yes, the pressure mechanism is our error correction mechanism. If I may tell an anecdote about the study, and that, well, as you know, the fundamental problem of socialist economy is that you cannot determine prices. So when people told me in Europe, he said, well, we don't care, there is an international market. We take them from abroad. Comrade Stalin, when the world will be communist, where do we take the price? And Stalin answered, well, maybe we need a capitalism in Switzerland. So we told who use the prices.
That's why you still have a little bit of freedom in Switzerland. All right, any last question? Yes. How does the system deal with greed? How do you define greed? I'm curious. What's your definition of greed? So I would say, greed is often excessive pursuit of something. Again, as long as you're not breaking the law, if you break the law, you go to jail. And you decide that I'm going to spend the next 10 years of my life making as much money as I can. A lot of people would look at you and say, you're greedy. But if the only way to make money is by producing products and trading with other people, by producing values and trading with other people, why does anybody care if I'm greedy? It might not be psychologically good for me to be greedy. It might be better to have a more balanced life. There might be a lot of other things. But from a social perspective, political perspective, as long as I'm not breaking the law, why does anyone care? And it could be in my long-term self-interest to focus on one aspect of life or period and immerse myself in it, and other people may call it greedy. So what? I guess I don't see what's so bad about greed as long as it's within the boundaries of law and your own healthy psychology. Okay, thank you.
Great. So thank you so much. I think we might go on for hours. I encourage everybody to read Ayn Rand's novels, watch also the movies.
Can I just say something about what you have in front of you?
Sure, please.
There's a little blue card, and you can scan that card with your phone, and you can get a free Ayn Rand book. So that it'll download onto your phone, onto your iPad. You can choose which Ayn Rand book you want, and you can get a free book. If you can't find them in the back, there's plenty of them up here. And then the second flyer there's a flyer for a conference that we're holding which is a Ayn Rand conference for kind of Europe, which we do once a year. And this year it's in Athens. And for many young people, we offer free scholarships. So we pay for your airfare, we pay for your hotel, and you can attend. And that is happening in April of next year. So that is the flyer, and you can already register for the conference now.
Thank you so much.